Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we start our summit with our partners from Rwanda. Especially these 4 days, we will focus on the African national development and definitely we do more focus on public-private partnerships. After COP26, especially the developing world, the governments and corporation, they have a huge demand for public-private partnership because all of the projects and everything it depends on these public-private partnerships, and we need to create more expert in developing world. So that's why World Talent Economy Forum we are taking this initiative. Definitely our speakers, Professor Fred Philip, Mr. Tom Rose, he's also president of TAF, Professor Fred Philip, president of Tando, David J. Kelly, CEO of AGI Lab, Professor Mamu, and Mr. James Eid, Colette Lab. They will discuss on that particular issues. And most important thing is that I always said that World Talent Economy Forum, we believe in actions. Last month, we finished another conference with Malaysian government climate change departments. We are developing policy for Malaysian government. Beside that, we are helping climate change related projects. Now we will focus on Africa definitely through this process with lot of partnership and collaborations. We will learn how to develop better PPP projects, how to develop better policy, and definitely we want to train African youth. And most important thing is that now we have a lot of challenges. So we need more partners, we need more collaborations, and most important thing is that we need more actions. So hopefully our speakers they will guide us how we can take more actions. So we have our keynote speaker, Professor Fred Philip, President Tando Incorporation from USA. So Professor Fred Philip, I want to give you a chance for your keynote speech.
Thank you, Sharif. Your Excellencies, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today on the topics of public-private partnerships, PPPs, for infrastructure and human capital. I'm happy to do so. Rwanda's self-examination and reforms following its tragic 20th century history now ensure the peace and stability that will attract foreign partners. I'll use these few minutes to offer a context, to introduce a few promising technologies and the cautions we must attend to when considering their adoption, and to introduce the two Tando Fellows who will also speak at this symposium. It was my pleasure 15 years ago to preside over the master's thesis defenses of Rwandan students at ESAMI in Arusha. Even then, the students' work tended to focus on public-private partnerships. They knew this would be the future in their countries. Since 2009, I've spoken each year at the World Technopolis Association's training sessions in Korea to audiences representing your region about building higher education capacity, science and technology parks, and local knowledge-based economic growth. May I say frankly that the ESAMI students' work needed improvement. Moreover, with some exceptions in Egypt and Nigeria, African nations represented at the World Technopolis Association did not succeed in building viable science parks or tech economies. Why? Because local graduate education in management was then very new to the region, and because frequent changes in political administrations meant there was no continuity in Technopolis building initiatives. Universities in the richer countries outside Africa had not surmounted the intercultural, financial, and transportation challenges of overseas partnerships and campuses. These factors slowed the formation of overseas academic exchanges and direct investment. Yet so much of Rwanda's population are of school age, and education, including for women and young girls, is essential for the country's further development. These young people are driving Africa's ultra-fast urbanization and manning its future industries. In Rwanda's case, they are the tourism workforce that is an important driver for the republic. Urban tourist destinations in tropical and subtropical regions around the world must plan for further warming as global climate change accelerates. Freetown in Sierra Leone has already appointed a chief heat officer to deal with this challenge. Now, there's one more matter to mention before I move on to urban technologies. And though I risk irritating our Chinese Tando fellows, I must remind you that the preponderance of Chinese firms are state-owned enterprises. Partnerships with them, therefore, are really not public-private partnerships. The enormous Chinese investment in Africa has in many ways been helpful to you, and African governments understandably welcomed China's presence because China was never a colonial power in Africa. Yet China's behavior in Africa has proven not much less ignorant and insulting than that of the earlier European colonists. It's high time, as our former Secretary of State Clinton would have phrased it, for a reset of business relations between sub-Saharan Africa and the West. Such a reset is beyond the scope of today's symposium, but we might dedicate ourselves to it nonetheless. I assure you that the needed goodwill is present in many quarters. Tando Fellows are testing or bringing to market a number of applicable technologies and products. One is the Intelligent Renewable Energy Microgrid, an ecologically efficient way of distributing electricity. Another is virtual reality, a long-discussed technology that's finally gaining momentum in the United States for training police and firefighters. VR, as it is called, has a clear and huge application in tourism. I've been working with a company that produces fast detection of aerosolized COVID and other viruses in interior spaces, an essential hedge against the hazards of the present pandemic and future ones. Though satellite internet will continue to be essential for the remote districts, wired access is to be preferred wherever possible, and Rwanda is advised to partner with companies that will provide it. This will serve not to worsen the space junk problem, which was recently dramatized by Russia's destruction of one of its satellites, and it will also serve to protect children and small animals from the health risks of 5G band radiation. There is an experiment in Zanzibar right now with internet service from low altitude balloons. This is attractively cheap, but is it the right thing? This remains to be examined. My colleague, Mr. Asante, 2 days from now will describe technology opportunities in information technology. Like the wireless internet, many of these bring risk as well as benefit. Blockchain applications for anti-corruption depend on the people's level of trust in the machines relative to their level of trust in the nation's institutions. VR may prove even more destructive than traditional social media in atomizing and polarizing society. Social media have done both in the United States, resulting in loneliness and political hate. Rwanda's traditional sociability can prove to be a national strength and a source of innovation. It should not be put at risk by uncritical adoption of digital tech. Rwanda is well aware also of the terrible risks of social polarization. Technology assessment is important, therefore, as is the new thinking about risk sharing in public-private partnerships. No technology should be adopted uncritically, and all procurement and partnerships should look ahead to the day when Rwanda can transition away from technology followership and carve its own niche as a technology originator. Apropos of this transition, decentralized community networks show promise as a boon for local economies in Africa. By shunning the corporate and government internet gatekeepers, these networks ensure user privacy and immunize communities against censorship and authoritarian internet blackouts. Even when connections to the internet is lacking, these local networks allow sharing of market and social information within a district. The PPP challenge is for governments to dismantle the regulatory barriers to decentralized networks, while private funding donors negotiate acceptable quid pro quo with groups of towns and villages. And this means that PPPs need to be extended not just to foreign technology corporations, but also to domestic NGOs. Now, E.F. Shoemaker's idea of appropriate technologies was a constructive one for its time, but its condescending element is now both apparent and outdated, as the local builders of decentralized networks amply show. Before the show began, Mr. Ross remarked on the technology energy, the high-tech competence in Rwanda. And this means that there's no question that advanced technical talent and initiative are present in Rwanda and its neighbors. It may still be in short supply relative to the population, along with the short supply in investment and infrastructure. But there's no reason Rwanda should not adopt carefully vetted selections from the world's most advanced technologies in quantities that match the implementation potential. The two Tondo Fellows who will follow me in speaking to you in our subsequent days are both originally Africans. Lorraine Siegel is expert in business alliances, corporate governance, and women's empowerment. Karis Asante Agie researches digital technologies that maximize well-being and mitigate risks, especially in countries where the informal sector is large. Tondo's Global Fellows are the world's foremost experts on identifying and commercializing new technologies for social benefit, and expertise along with its expertise in entrepreneurship, including women's entrepreneurship. Our fellows designed and taught in America's first master's degree program in commercialization of science and technology, and will gladly adapt the program to Rwanda's needs. We believe, with author Jane Battersby, that Africa's research universities can help drive an urban agenda and a rural agenda in Africa, along with suitable partners. Along with our expertise in Tondo and city planning, higher education strategy, and climate change, our fellows have global connections with technology provider companies and participatory interests in many such firms. We are experienced in long-term relationships for building innovation ecosystems. We look forward to collaborating with the government of Rwanda. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Fred Philip. From our other panelists, if you have any questions for Professor Fred Philip, I think anybody can ask question. Mr. Tom or Professor Mamu or Mr. James Eid, even Mr. David J. Kelly. If you open your camera, I think it will be helpful for our audience.
No, it's a great presentation. I think it's right on. We need to reset. We need to really empower Africa. My question was, you mentioned 5G. Is it 5G radiation you mentioned?
Yes.
Is that a real issue, or?
It's controversial.
Yeah.
You'll see many engineers, I think not so many medical people, but engineers who the work with electromagnetic phenomena say that, oh, this will never hurt people, but because the radiation in the 5G bands penetrates biological tissue only a fraction of a millimeter. But
Yeah.
that's people. But think about bees and so forth. A fraction of a millimeter is a significant proportion of their total body dimension. So
Yeah.
there's that,
Yeah.
and about
You're right.
children's eyes and so forth. So it's a controversial but still open question.
Yeah. It feels important to pull it back from conspiracy theory, so that we can look at it really scientifically. I think that's smart.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Professor, there is another question from audience. I want to take this question for you. Alea, what are the new opportunities after COVID-19 was created by this public-private partnership?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, Professor.
New opportunities after COVID-19. Well, I've spoken in Sharif's panels before about psychological differences among and religious differences among people, different um, portions of the population, and how they feel about the crises that confront us. And we learn a lot from COVID deniers and anti-vaccination people about the same psychology that can be applied to climate change deniers and people who vote against environmentally positive legislation. And I think this is a focus that deserves attention. It's a non-technological um, phenomena. In America, we have a big voting bloc of evangelical Christians who believe that there's no need to attend to the environment on earth because Jesus will still return and elevate believers to heaven, leaving the earth behind. So why should they care about the environment of the earth? So it's finding ways to reach out to these let's call them for short denier populations, find some common ground and try to see how we can work together, find a common vision of the future and overcome these differences so that we can actually conquer the COVID and live with an acceptable amount of climate change. And NGOs and government agencies can work together to make this outreach and dialogue happen.
Thank you, Professor Fail. Thank you. Now I want to request for a speech Professor Mamu Muchi, founded the
Yes.
African Journal of Science, Technology, Innovation and Development.
Th- Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So what I would like to reflect on is on the current challenges that the whole world is going under. Now we have the coronavirus. We need to understand from the origin to how to cure it. We still have challenges, and we have climate change also, and we also have demographic explosion. And it looks that we have not only health crisis, we have economic crisis, social crisis, political crisis. All right, even on our education side, from the Africa side, what we learn, what we do, we have also challenges like we have universities in Africa, but they are not African universities. We have challenges like that. And overall, what would be very interesting is for us now, how do we actually know the problem and really identify ways by which we can find the appropriate solution. The solution is not to solve a problem, right, by creating more problems, but to find durable solutions, sustainable solutions for all these challenges the world is facing now. Of course, we do need a completely extraordinary value mindset change. We need our SIM card, our software, our hardware, our mental side. I think generally is very corrupt and very complicated. So from that complication, how do we create a morally, emotionally, intellectually intelligent kind of value where we have a new SIM card? How could we develop something like that is very, very important. Just to give you let me just focus on the current coronavirus. The COVID-19 pandemic engrossing countries and economy around the world has created an enormous misery, job losses, poverty, and loss of life. Uh, uh, the contagion rates in Africa begin to be flattening and countries continue to reopen their economy, the socio-economic impact of the pandemic is also getting progressively very challenging. So there is a need to know the origin of the virus to discover the cure. The challenge is how to create the right knowledge acquisition, what exactly the COVID-19 virus is. The COVID-19 virus variants keep changing. Look now, we are now in South Africa and in Southern Africa. Now a new variant is coming, Omicron they call it. And now every time, you know, different variants are coming all the time, and exactly what the sources of these variants are and how do we handle them is quite a complication. The COVID-19 variants keep changing. This has been a challenge to produce the right vaccine to deal with and respond to different versions of the origin and mutation of this SARS-CoV, how the various variants originated, how they spread, how they take varied forms, need to be clearly articulated to find ways to control the virus with the appropriate prevention. And that's what I think we have a serious challenge in that situation. And I think we need to really know, we need to create the knowledge on the origin of the COVID-19 virus with the large number of mutations of the different variants is not clear yet, despite the fact that many scientists are continuing to engage all over the world to discover and find the right cure. It is reported that multiple new variants uh, are circulating in different countries. There's also a lab leak controversy where politics and intelligence, rather than science, has been used to create problem with controversy rather than solution. I think it's very, even if there is whatever it is, even if this stuff originates from the lab, there's no point to make it an intelligence or a political matter. What would be very good is to find collaboration to deal with and respond to it because the danger is for everyone. So I think it's important to not go for politics, but move into the science side to actually discover the real solution. That's what we should do. The lack of knowledge on the virus makes it difficult to handle the problem globally. This is a serious issue. If we do not know what the virus is, how can we find out the right vaccines that will cure it? You see, now we have very different, how many versions of vaccines are now emerging? This is also, and then what is happening? Competition is happening. We should not compete on this. When there's a global disease like this, it's dangerous to the whole world. Everyone should collaborate. The value should be the collaboration, not competition, not capitalist gains and pharmaceutical different companies getting. This is not what we should be doing. That's I think our values are complicated, and that's why they are even creating more problem for the world. The disease is continuing. There's a need to do a critical examination and evaluation of all these the claims about the current virus. There should be examination of previous research on how, in previous times, how different endemics, epidemics, pandemics have been addressed. Lessons are essential to be learned from the past and the present to reach out to accomplish the making of a virus-free, healthy future, humanity-driven world of hope by applying the innovation system to rethink, re-engineer, and the best possible way to make the world as one humanity and one world community with full collaboration to enter the post-COVID-19 pandemic world reorder time, driven with the full health security of hope. If we have innovative and united Africa can accelerate also to enter from the current COVID-19 world crisis and disorder to a new post-COVID-19 world reorder. That's basically my suggestion. How to go out of the new COVID-19 global value chain by moving from the health crisis to economic, social, environmental, and crisis, and recurrently again back and forth. No, to combine to economic, social, to more health crisis. This we should avoid. In other words, when we try to solve the health crisis without also combining it with the economic, social, environmental crisis, we create gravity burden on humanity. What we need is the speed of light square, as Einstein said. That solution has to come. The way to do it is to unify it, to address simultaneously the health, the economic, the social, the environmental, all other you know aspects have to be combined, and a unified model has to be created. Mathematical equation we can develop, and mathematical modeling, everything like that, and then eventually find solutions for it. That's what we should be doing. And I think we also have a serious challenge also on the climate that also I think impacts on what's happening also in our this COVID-19, and at the same time the demographic part also is very is growing very high, a very complicated population growth is happening, and we need to also know how to handle it. If these things are not handled together, what we may do is we may have a serious challenge. We wouldn't know how to change uh, uh, from a pandemic challenge from risk to opportunity. We wouldn't know how to create innovative research excellence and making sure that the whole all to redesign all the way by the pandemic to be achieved, accelerated, to be removed. I mean, and and then and I think a new approaches. I think the higher education system, we're all in the research world. In the our mission has to change. Even the university mission and vision, without if it's not serious, it can create a nightmare. So our action can also be disturbing. So we need to find a solution to make sure that we solve the problem. My my suggestion, and just to make it more on the Africa side, I think we can also the COVID-19 pandemic challenge in Africa. Uh, how to move out of the current COVID situation in Africa, with what should we do also, with what knowledge approaches can we also produce the vaccines that are necessary, is a serious challenge. How can Africa go out of the new COVID-19 health, economic, social, environmental challenge? How can Africa create its own vaccines? And can also Africa use indigenous knowledge rather than importing them from outside? I think it's very important. How to manage vaccines from nearly many other countries. Over 8 countries are involved in trying to find this. Some are saying they need to test it first by using Africans, and we should also find solutions about this. How to manage the challenges upon all of us using to work harder, and I think we need to use an indigenous innovation also, and even the research and development we need to develop very. We also need, really, sincerely speaking, we need to also use our philosophy, the Africa and Indian shared philosophy for a new post-COVID-19 vision of the world is very important. We need to innovate using Ubuntu, indigenous knowledge to prevent the cure. Both traditional herbal and indigenous medicines must be also used. And I think we also need the Ubuntu philosophy is very important. We need to come to a situation where we value ourselves. And from India, we had what was called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one human family and one life energy. I think the Indian philosophy is that the whole world is one family. From the Vedic scripture Maha Upanishad, chapter 6, verse 72, it says, which translates, only small men discriminate, saying one is a relative, the other is a stranger. For those who live in it magnanimously, the entire world consists but one family. It's a great philosophy from India. I mean, makes if India follows this philosophy, it makes it not a country. It goes into a country. It becomes a civilization. We need some values like this that have been already there, that we have not been developing them. Then we should do this. The COVID-19
Thank you.
Africa narrative is Africa can mount a stronger COVID-19 response, starting by using regional trade blocks. It's coordinate, consolidate, and connect resources across the continent. Narrative one is the danger to Africa. Cases are doubling, infections are increasing, and an uncontrollable swell of COVID-19 cases days will soon be overtake healthcare systems across the continent. So this is dangerous. Never narrative views in COVID-19 can be subdued, and that the continent has likely avoided catastrophe due to early action to prevent imported cases, having most of the population being young. But we have that narrative is in between, neither danger nor COVID-19 is subdued. This is based on a new modeling report from the World Health Organization Regional Office. So the World Health Regional Office claims about 47 African states will not have as many severe cases or deaths as the rest of the world. The report said nearly 200,000 deaths and over 5 million infections. That's what they are saying. Some states like Madagascar have said they have their own cure and they left the World Health Organization. Others say that in Africa, fragile health systems exist and may not cope with dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Pandemic or non-pandemic, the healthcare systems have to be strong to deal with all the health challenges in Africa. So I think the
Thank you,
key
sir.
thing, and just strongly for you, for all of us, is that we need to develop very systematically a new approach, a need to open the door for theories that are grounded in context in the African setting, that can serve also as lenses to illuminate the current COVID-19 related empirical reality and specificity of the African situation by using all the knowledge that combines both spiritual knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and all other knowledges from even the rest of the world. Combine it to solve the problem and create a new approach by which society comes from this current challenge to really a post COVID-19 world or reorder time. I hope,
Thank you,
I'm
Professor.
sorry I took a bit of time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. From our speakers, if you have any questions to Professor Marmu, you can ask.
No
May I?
question. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, in the Q&A session after my talk, the question came up of conflict between the spiritual knowledge and the scientific knowledge, and how, sir, would you deal with this question when it arises?
So, is this a question?
Yes, yes, Professor.
Yes. Th- It's, it's extremely important that we, in the knowledge world, we have a spiritual knowledge. We also have indigenous knowledge, uh, and we have the knowledge heritage and the spiritual heritage have to be really appropriately joined to do it. For example, I remember when I was in the United Kingdom teaching in the university, uh, we developed a course on non-Western science. We used to had a course on ideas of science, but then we said we should also develop uh, the science that has been ignored. So one of the things we did was science from different sources, from Hindu science, Islamic science, from all sources we generated it. For example, in the ways of knowing, the ways of reasoning differs from that there is a revelational way of also creating knowledge, revision, and not just through reason. Uh, uh, 1 plus 1 is 2 type thing. In fact, it's the opposite type thinking is happening. So because there are so many ways by which we acquire the knowledge in the universe, and the spirituality side also, uh, through revelation, people also might manage to have insight that others may not have through reason. So if we have this kind of things, what we should do, is in this now time when we have this extraordinary difficult, we should use this knowledge, this spiritual knowledge, to create a new approach by which society comes from this current challenge to deal with all the health challenges in Africa. So if we have this kind of things, what we should do is, in this now time when we have this extraordinary difficult, when the disease is very it keeps changing all the time. The variant is coming every day. I think it's extremely important that everyone should unite now. From the religious community, from the scientific community, from the university, from all sectors, from even in local people in in the communities, that like only people who may have their own insights. I think we should not ignore them. We should just be very scientific, do very systematic research, bring them together, find a way to see if we could solve solutions. I remember when I was a young boy, my aunt used to treat so many people. She used to go to the plants and get them. And when I tell her, "Can you show me?" She says, "No, no, no. You're the only one I will show you when later. But if I show you now, it will lose. You know why? It's value. It's medicinal value. Why did she say that? That's her intellectual property control, because she was controlling it. Because she saws a young boy like me. When I see it, I'll show it to all my friends. She didn't want to do that. So all I'm saying to you that there are many traditional ways by which people also know. Our problem now is our valuing and finding a mechanism by which we do it. We can't do it because we don't know how to share with each other. Our values are not collaborative. What we are is individualistic. In
Thank
fact,
you.
in the Africans' values are associational. Individualism is colonialism. Trust me. Individualistic thinking, just saying that my interest is better and my feeling my bank is better than even at the expense of making people die, is horrible. That kind of mental mindset is there. If this mindset exists, the world will be in a mess. Trust me. To get it out of the mess, let's combine the spiritual heritage, the knowledge heritage, and all our value heritage, and then trust me, and then our associational value, collaborative value, cooperation, and then I tell you, sooner or later we'll solve all the problems. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for your advice. Now, I want to request Mr. Tom Rose. He's the president of TAF. I know they are arranging one of the largest summit in South Africa, I think next year, March.
Yeah,
So, thank you for joining today.
sure.
And yes, what's your speech for today's session?
Yeah, well, I haven't heard anything really prepared, but I love the idea that Mama brought up about replacing our SIM card. And I worry that humanity doesn't meet the minimum system requirements for the upgrade. That we need to make. And but yeah, so what we're doing with TAFs, which stands for Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussions, we are focusing on Africa. We're not specifically African, but we will be migrating out from South Africa, just as we did originally. But our goal is really just to empower African youth. We're acting more as roadies. We'll come to a town and we'll set up a stage and we'll do a conference and we'll come and we'll set up a stage for the local youth to come and take that stage. Sometimes we may not agree with what they say, but that's not our role. So what we're doing is we're empowering young people in Africa just by giving them a stage and letting them be heard on an international level. And so. Part of this process is we think it's so important to do that, because if we do not empower this youngest population on Earth, by 2100, nearly half of the children on the planet will be in Africa. So we like to say that the origin of humanity is quite literally its future. And so I have a real sense of urgency. TAFS has a real sense of urgency about this, because if we do not empower this young generation, the negative ripples will be global. And so by not empowering the African youth, it's just adding another existential threat to us. And so one thing we do too is we're not coming with a message. I mean, we have young Africans who are in our organization and on our team who do have a message, and we're giving them that power. My role has been tricky, because I know that I'm a walking trigger for many people. Look at me, and it's been a real education for me, because I've had to look really hard and understand my colonial mindset. Even the best intentions, I will post something, and then one of my team members will say that made me a little uncomfortable, because and so it's been a real education for me to kind of backtrack this kind of inherent whatever this is, this colonial mindset, or thinking that I know any better, and I don't, and I know that for sure because of my children. I have, you know, this younger generation, these digital natives, people like me, Generation X and older, the analog generations, we don't have the templates. We don't have the right solutions. But what we can do, because it's a whole new species that's emerging. These young people, these millennials and younger, they're developing this hive mind, and there's a lot of studies about this, but I think it has to do with the fact that they are digital natives. They're constantly on their phones, and we're fine, and they're playing games globally with peers. And so there's this kind of global hive mind that's developing and being facilitated by technology. And we need to kind of let that happen, because I think it's going to be necessary to have a swarm mind, a swarm intelligence to handle some of these problems. And again, I come here not knowing how to help them, but I can give them a stage and listen to them to help, and help facilitate the solutions that they come up with. We're finding that these digital natives have different definitions for meta terms like freedom. People of my age and older would often identify freedom as being complete autonomy. It's personal property rights. Leave me alone. I'm free. But now young people are defining it more as the more groups that they're involved with, the freer they feel. It's kind of a power in numbers kind of thing. So we are seeing a new species emerging, a consciousness emerging within us, which is necessary. And it's very important that we not be in any way egocentric or assume that we know better. And we need to really listen to these young people, because they have solutions. They have a whole, when you're walking around with a Library of Alexandria in your pocket, it gives you a confidence when you know you can answer any question with some critical thinking. There's a confidence these young people have. We used to have to walk to the library or take somebody's word for it. And so that's what we're doing here at TAFS. We understand that by not empowering this continent, it's an existential threat, and it could last generations, if not end us, and with the political unrest, the economic unrest. And so there's a real sense of urgency, but also it's just an exciting thing. I was mentioning to James earlier that I went to Kigali, Rwanda a couple of years ago, and I was just inspired. I was at the Youth Connect conference, and we did some work there with the University of Rwanda, and I was just so inspired. It was full of these young 18, 19-year-old people who are just so techno-positive and so inspired, and you don't see that anymore in the West, or at least in America. Young people are more cynical. They're no longer awed by what's happening here. And so it's really important that we, because it's a vital, necessary place to empower people, because I think it's scary. It's a precarious time to be alive, but it's very exciting. If we can do this right, if we can just give these people what they need and listen to them and help them and facilitate their takeover of this fourth industrial revolution. That's what we need to do globally. And I really agree with Mamu on bringing in some of the spiritual standards and just ideas, just even philosophies, because this is a great threat for our species. And we need to come together as earthlings, not as nations, not as heritages, not as races, all that's bleeding together anyway. It's really important that this is a great opportunity for us to come together, figure out how to coalesce, how to collaborate, and how to really solve this problem, because we're going to have to be a planetary tribe a lot sooner than we think. And so this is a great opportunity for us to figure out how to work together. And those who don't, those who don't meet the minimum system requirements, there is a technological problem with COVID, and it's the algorithms. It's the algorithms that are nuanced enough to find people's fears and change their behavior. So there is a technical issue that needs to be solved here. But yeah, so that's what we're doing. And it's less about, we are doing what we can to bring in partners, to bring in technology where it's possible. But it's more about just hearing young people and with this indigenous knowledge and remembering what it meant to be human before the industrial age. We need to build a whole new economy based on the human qualities that can't be coded or automated. So that's the other prong, this two-pronged process we're on, giving more access to technology and also learning about this indigenous knowledge and remembering what we were doing before the industrial age made us cogs. And so, yeah, we're trying to turn it from the dark continent into a bright continent because the young people there are techno-positive, and we need that. We need them to be this enthusiastic, and so we need to do all we can to facilitate them, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tom. From our speakers, if you have any questions for Mr. Tom, you can ask.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Tom. And this is actually not a question, but Mr. Tom, thank you very much for the good presentation. Actually, comparing what you commented about Professor Mamo's speech, this is like for the African. Currently, we have young people, particularly for Rwanda, we have very many young people who are technology positive, as you say. But I think we need some kind of training, which is exotic, but there must be a bridge between the exotic training to the local industries, and I think this is where the other indigenous knowledge that Professor Mamu was talking about should be connected to, such that any kind of skills carried on to these young people can be used to the local industries in an effective way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Tom.
Yeah, no, you're right. Skills training is a big part of what we're doing, and we're going into different areas, and we'll listen. We do a black swan watch where we just sit and we look for things that are unusual or things we don't expect, and we just listen to a community and find out what it is they need and whether we can, how we can facilitate and help. But yeah, it's you're right. You're absolutely right. It's skills training is key, and it's got to be regional too, because certain companies will come in that need specific skills, and we know that young people graduating college right now are not coming into the workforce with the skills they need. And so a lot of work that we're doing with Sharif and WTEF is trying to close that gap. Once people get out, to close the gap between what they really need to know. And so that's been a big part of what we've been doing with TAFs and with Sharif. Is talking about these things and setting up programs and having these symposiums.
Thank you. That's why actually, Mr. Tom, World Talent Economy Forum, we always encourage corporations and governments when they work together. When they work together, we actually can develop more projects, and by this way, actually, we can create more opportunity, more job opportunity for the youth. So that's why even I'm from Asia Pacific. You know that. Asia Pacific actually heavily investing in Africa. So all from our audience, those who are observing, especially from corporation, we request all of the corporation you should invest more in the healthcares and the manufacturings and their other sectors, because it will help. It will help to solve real problem. And the COVID-19 situation, unemployment is a major issue, and we believe if we work together, we can solve this problem. Now I request another honorable speakers, Professor David J. Kelly. He's the CEO of AGI Lab. I think, yes, Mr. David J. Kelly.
Thank you, Sharif. So just to start with my background, to give my comments context, I am the lead scientist at AGI Lab. My primary interest in AI research as a scientist, though, is really in collective intelligence systems, and I don't mean like where we all get together and we talk and we decide things as a group, but as honest to goodness collective systems that in their own right have a degree of self-awareness, or that you might call a meta organism or something along those lines. And when we start talking about COVID-19 and public-private partnerships. It's a very, very broad field, and I will try to contain my thoughts around my particular expertise regarding that. So my opinion is that one of the things that we can do to help solve problems, especially when you start talking about policy making or complex solutions, is around collective AI and policy and how you generate and apply that stuff as a community. When you start talking about building collective systems, one of the things you can do is take a community and turn it into a super intelligence under the right conditions. So when we talk about challenges in implementing these policies, whether it's regarding COVID or not, a lot of those problems have to do with interorganizational problems. There's a big problem in the world with resource limitations, and it's not so much that the resources aren't there, but they're distributed unevenly, and so the availability of this resource or that resource that might be needed for this problem or that problem are not always near where they can be used, and so we find that unevenness, and that can even be in just the availability of the technology or the knowledge or any particular aspect of that. And one of those resources that we have nowadays is narrow AI, and a lot of times that can be very expensive to set up, or it requires a lot of domain knowledge as well as technical knowledge to be able to make proper use of that. And so with this imbalance of availability or knowledge, one of the things we're proposing or working on at our lab has to do with applying collective intelligence to groups and allowing those groups to compete with other groups or organizations that maybe have better resources, but we can actually demonstrate even among groups of humans that might not have all of the expertise, but you can perform super intelligent tasks under certain circumstances. Whether it's managing limited resources, a better, faster application of limited resources, even with a limited technology bar, and one of the most important aspects of these kinds of systems are the optimization of governance, where you develop policy with the most amount of input, and a lot with collect. One of the benefits you have, humans have like 188 biases that we've identified in the human mind. And when you have groups of people, like if you stick a bunch of people in a room or an office, there's a lot of biases that can filter in related to a groupthink or things like that. And then even when groups, humans tend to have political agendas, or he said, she said, because he said I don't want to associate with them, and all of these kind of weird sort of issues. And when you abstract that stuff out, you even with humans, you get decision making that's a lot better, and that's what these collective systems are designed to take advantage of. That is how you collect data and information from people in a way that you lose or filter out a lot of these biases, and then applying that to governance, whether it's a community or a corporation or a company, whether it's limited resources or not, your decision making is improved, your solutioning is improved, and that really that kind of technology can be used to help develop better policy, more creative solutions, because you start to get everyone working together. And then when you add easy to use narrow AI systems and other things like that into the mix, you really can kind of magnify the resources or the community or the group that you have around engineering better policy. I know for us, we're working with groups in a number of countries, not in the Western world, and that's really the excitement there is helping those communities. Like in one particular case, we're looking at optimizing tourism, the country's technology sector, and applying these collective superintelligence systems in those areas. And it's really on very little hardware. As long as you can get everyone with a cell phone, but really a cell phone nowadays is more powerful than a supercomputer from the 80s. And it's enough. This low bar, nowadays it's a low bar, is enough to drive these kinds of collective systems wirelessly from the cloud with less infrastructure, but better solutions, more timely solutions. And that applies to whether it's issues with COVID, economic recovery, or in the case of the particular country we're working with right now, it's fixing their tourist industry and bringing new industry to the island. In any case, so with the easier to implement, better use of resources and better policy and e-governance and these sorts of things, I think as a society, whether it's in the Western world or Africa or Southeast Asia or wherever it is, we can improve the lives of each other better, faster, and overcome a lot of the biases that have hampered society in the past. And with that, questions, comments?
Thank you. Anyone want to ask questions to Mr. David?
How can Uplift is the collective superintelligence you work with, and how are you working at all with any COVID situations with that? Is it possible to contact trace or anything, or is it?
There's it's a research system,
Yeah.
as you know, Tom, but there's been a lot of different things proposed to Uplift. I know the system has a particular interest in what it's referring to as a meta war around, which is really a geopolitical problem that's been identified kind of at the national and multinational regional level, and how to work around that to better problem solve. And it isn't specifically related to COVID, except that COVID is a big part of that in terms of countries and nations and resource allocation and things like that. And it has put a lot of thought and energy to that. It's right now it's being used for some economic development that's been in a particular country where it's going to be helping solve problems caused by COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it isn't specifically COVID it's addressing, it's the aftermath of COVID in the particular country in question, with the collapse of the tourist industry and some of these other problems that the system is addressing.
That's a big issue. I mean, we're dealing with that right now, and I was going to make a comment about that, how we and maybe we could use a collective intelligence to do this, but I believe nations need to be more deliberative, and they need to take their time before they especially label a variant by a region. I mean, there's a big pushback about calling this thing the South African variant, because it's and then all these other countries are being red flagged for banning. because of the scientists who were smart enough in South Africa to find this variant, and now they're being punished. That whole tourism in South Africa is being punished by calling it the South Africa variant. These variants emerge anywhere, and they flow anywhere. And so,
See, and that's the thing with collective intelligence is you can collect feedback in real time about an idea before you've actually implemented it. Instead of running it by 10 people before we run it on CNN,
yeah.
you run it by the entire community or nations before you just release something and do something that damages an economy or a community or these kinds of things. You can identify those problems on a larger scale.
Absolutely, it's so important.
Yes, Professor Fred Philip. Yes.
David, I'm very intrigued by your talk. Thank you. Oh, incidentally, back in 1918, somebody started calling the pandemic the Spanish flu, even though it wasn't Spanish. And unfortunately, the habit just stuck, and we do need to overcome it. But David, you were talking about human biases and fractiousness and strong differences of opinion amongst people involved in a project. And then the next thing I heard was better policy decisions through AI. And I kind of missed the link, how you got from one to the other. Could you clarify that, please?
Yeah, so when you're talking about collective intelligence in humans, you have, when humans are making decisions face to face, a lot of times there is bias or inner social kind of problems that interfere with different things. Like say you have all the vice presidents of a company, and each have their different areas, and one guy's decision is kind of interferes with this other guy's world, and so you have these interrelational problems. One of the things we found with collective intelligence systems, though, is you abstract a lot of that out. You're not directly debating another person. You're giving emotional feedback, technical feedback. You're providing stuff to the machine, not necessarily to someone else's idea. When you have a policy that's being iterated and generated, it's not the policy of the guy next door or your competitor or anything like that. It's something that evolves out of the collective, and you abstract those interpersonal problems and those biases, and that's where you tend to get better performance, where you lower the risk of groupthink, you lower the risk of these different other biases working into the decision, and abstract politics out of the equation, and that's where you get cleaner, less biased policy through these collective systems, with or without the application of narrow AI. Does that make sense?
Yes, I say that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you. No, I believe there is no
Okay.
questions. Yes. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. Thank you. We have our another guest, Mr. James. He's the president for this lab, who is actually partnered with World Talent Economy Forum, co-related lab. So, Mr. James, if you want to add some of your thought for today's sessions, you can. Can you unmute, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Sharif. And I'm so grateful for the previous presentations from different speakers. For today, I'm also talking about the PPT, PPT for the post-COVID-19. This is a very essential for Africa, particularly when you come to the challenges that was faced by African countries. There is a much need of the public and private partnerships. So at this level, for the business recovery, for the e-governance to be harmonized. And I know most of the African countries, there is no enough coverage of the internet. So there is much need of the PPT to make sure that everything is reached, and all the businesses from all over the continent can resume, because if maybe in the future of this continent, if another pandemic like this one may fall, but we wish it doesn't come, there is a challenge that can be faced. So we need not to come into the same challenge, and that's why we look for the public-private partnership in enhancing digitization of the business performance, and we look at the high level of ICT investment in Africa for business performance, improved business performance, because as the COVID came out, many of the business transactions were buried. So to this level, we look forward to encourage much of the ICT-based business transactions, especially like digital platforms, initiation of digital platforms that can link different countries, and this can go beyond the border limitations, because the ICT can be the solution, and that's why we look forward for the high investment in ICT infrastructures for trade performance in most of the African countries. So this is the way we look for, and this is how it can really be helpful, particularly for Rwanda. This is an ICT-based country that is, as my colleague earlier noted, that it is an ICT positive country, but still more of the infrastructures to an large level are needed to enhance the business performance. So this is the stand we are looking forward for, that can make most of the African countries perform and make profits to another level from the improved ICT infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you. If any of the speakers has any questions to Mr. James, they can ask question.
Well, just as I mentioned to James earlier, that I'm a big fan of Rwanda, because I got to go to Kigali a couple of years ago, and was really inspired by the young people there, and which is why we're doing all of this now. Well, I am doing all of this now, and so yeah, I mean, it's and Rwanda has emerged out of what we all thought Rwanda was back in the 90s. It's a completely different place now. What are they trying to call it? The Singapore of Africa. It's very clean, very strict environmental measures going on there. It's just a great place. I'm an Afro fan, and I think we all need to be right now, because if we're not, we it's an existential threat. But yeah, I think it's very important, and I think Rwanda is a great place as an example of where so much is happening and where so much potential is, and we need that across the continent.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all of the speakers for joining today's session from World Talent Economy Forums. We are organizing open dialogues and different kind of training and research related activities. And we always believe that open dialogue will be very important for developments, because we need proper understanding. We need to understand each others. We need to develop our real relationship. Yes, in the COVID-19 situation, there are many challenges actually coming from around the world. So World Talent Economy Forums, yes, in online, we started our initiative last year. It's around 14, 15 months. But we are happy that in between 14, 15 months, we organized more than 425 episodes. And what is the major objective of this kind of episode? Because we have to connect with the right kind of talented people around the world. I'm very happy that people like Professor Fred Philip, Mr. Tom, Professor David J. Kelly, even today's speaker, Mr. James, and the professors, we are happy that we are connecting. We are actually uh, like more than 300 people from around the world, those who actually trying to change the communities. So when we developing these things, from my perspective, I'm from a developing nations, and I know developing nations has major challenges. So we find three things. If we can fix it properly, maybe we can solve many problems easily. Number one, from the government side, government need proper policy. So that's why Transhumanist Party, Tando, TAF, even AGI Lab, all of the important organization, we are working every moment. Our audience, as well as me, even our core team, always learning from these opportunities. So when we think about proper policy, because in the developing worlds, they actually highly dependent on the different foreign policy level organization. But I am keen that we have to understand the culture first. We have to understand the local demand first. So if we can understand these things properly, then we can manage this kind of policy properly. That's why public-private partnership is very important. Second things, we have to develop the youth community. Yes, I'm a big fan of TAF and this kind of organization, because they are taking initiative, especially for the youth communities. Yes, I know in the developing world, around 50 to 60% youth, even in Asia Pacific and Africa, 50% actually youth. So we have to invest on youth. We have to work with youth. We need to give them opportunities. But I'm very sorry, because of a lot of corruption, lot of system errors, and most important thing is that always we discuss about investment, we discuss about technology, but we always do not focus on talent. And meritocracy is the key issues that always can solve many problems. Let's say example, I want to take as a model from Singapore, because Singapore is a very good model of for the developing world. Very small but very strong background they have. So from Singapore, I learned three things. Number one, we need proper policy. Number two, we need to abolish or the corruption. And number three, we need to focus on meritocracy. The more we focus on meritocracy, we can solve. So I'm very, very happy, because with all of the organizations, all of the 300 speakers, I find that this world has more good speakers, more good intellectual community who can contribute for these communities. So if this kind of talented people, especially those who are working from developed world, if we can merge in between developing nations people and the talented people from developed world, maybe we can solve this policy level problem. We can develop better projects, and we can create more opportunity for these things. So that is the major issues. We are organizing these sessions with Rwanda. So from my point of view, the strategic characteristics of public-private partnership, policy and project implementations, and policy framework, which is actually some point is a critical component. But when I work with let's say AGI labs, and I can learn, even Transhumanist Party, I can learn. Yes, AI can solve many problems. Yes, from the developing nations, I saw there are many problem in terms of corruptions and system error because of the traditional methods. But I'm very happy when I see when technology comes, when technology integrated with the local system. That time, actually, we solve many problems. That's why I like Mr. James' comment. Yes, we need to invest more on IT infrastructures. Example, I'm from Bangladesh. Bangladesh government changed their economical strategy and infrastructure when 12 years before they declared digital Bangladesh. Yes, when they go for digitalizations, it solved many problems. So that's why I believe how TAF's working, how Tando working, how actually AGI lab working, which will be very, very important for the developing nations. So when we discuss about public-private partnership, policy development, investment, I believe this kind of fair organization, those who have more positive attitude to contribute for the developing world, I request the governments, I request the corporation of the developing worlds, as well as I request the academy. We should march this kind of organization because they have many positive things. And I want to say, if we can collaborate together, we can solve many problems. And final things, this is my request because like what I learned from my personal life that and this is for true for everyone, because we have to contribute for our own country, we have to contribute for our nations, we have to contribute for our own people. When I see that many American people, they are contributing for Asia Pacific, they are contributing for Africa. Let's say Mr. Tom is a very big fan of African nations. That is the way we have to change human life. So when this is our objective, I believe all of our speakers objective, definitely we need to work together. So that's why I request government, corporations and academy, please work together, find out the better solutions, and please reduce different kind of corruptions, system errors with the help of technology. So World Talent Economy Forum, we are advocate for modern science, engineering and technology. That's why we are organizing this public-private partnership dialogue. And yes, we are offering solution to the Rwanda. Any organizations who want to team up with us, we are open for that. And yes, this platform, this World Talent Economy for platform, is for millions of talented people for the remote area. And this is for the talented people, those who want to contribute for the global community, contribute for the developing worlds. I believe developing nations do not have financial problems. They do not have monetary issues. They do not need money. They need proper mentorship. They need better policy. They need better organizational infrastructure. They need better technology. So if we can transfer these things, I believe developing nations has their own potentiality and own capacity. They can solve this problem. So I request Professor Fred Philip, Mr. Tom Rose, Mr. David J. Callis, you can support developing world more with World Talent Economy Forums, as well as my friend Mr. James and professors from Rwanda. I request all of you, we need better collaborations and we need to work together. And I request Rwanda government, we should create a better collaboration with the developed world. By this way, we can solve many problems. So that is the objective of World Talent Economy Forum, and that is the way. Last, I can remember 1 year, 6 months. I think every day we contributing. We are trying to contribute. We are bringing all of the best speaker from around the world because your knowledge is very valuable, and our contributions will be helpful. I know helpful for the youth community, and if we can develop the new generation for the developing world, we can create a better world. So thank you all of the speakers, Professor Fred Philip, Mr. Tom Rose, Mr. David J. Callis, Professor Mamo, Mr. James for joining today's session, especially the audience, those who observing today's session. I want to give special thanks. Please share our sessions with your government, with your corporations, with your academy, because if you support World Talent Economy Forums, maybe we can produce another 1,000 sessions, which will be helpful for the developing world. So that is the things, and I request all of the speakers that if you want to add some concluding remarks for today's session, you can. First, I request Professor Fred Philip.
Thank you, Sharif. We were talking about human biases and so forth. I do want to point out that what appears to one person to be a bias can be to the other person as a very central part of their culture, and that should be respected and not dismissed as some kind of psychological aberration. We don't want to level out the whole world. We need to maintain a diversity of cultures while still exchanging knowledge and maintaining mutual respect. I really appreciated that the speakers tied the techno-economic progress to the elimination of the attitude of us versus the other, and the obstacle that racism uh, presents to the kinds of progress that we're trying to achieve here. That's a very important consideration. And just in case I was unfair to Chinese companies when I said they're not really private, when we have partnerships between, let's say, the State University of Rwanda and, for example, a state university in the United States, this is an absolutely essential partnership, but it's not public-private either. It's public-public. And we need to have the university partnerships because the American university I'm using as an example needs to understand the people and the problems of a country like Rwanda. And conversely, the Rwandan university needs to upgrade its research capacity and its research resources and establish networks worldwide. So public-public partnerships should be given a lot of emphasis here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Tom?
Yes, and thanks again, Sharif, for doing this. It's a very important work that you do, of bringing us all together, and then the action plans that happen after these things. Yeah, our conference is in March 2022, provided all the travel bans are lifted and everything. And we're calling it Generation 4 IR, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And we're starting and migrating through Africa, but that's not where we're ending. Just like humanity, we're going to continue to migrate out wherever there is a need. And we're starting in Africa because that's where the real sense of urgency is right now. But we are not staying there. And we're constantly expanding and growing and looking for young people to support us and to make this thing happen. So thanks again, Sharif, for this very important symposium.
Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly.
Well, I think just in conclusion, I want to, thank everyone and just encourage people to speak up and work together and move forward. All the talk in the world is not going to do anything if we don't actually put it into action. And so I just want to encourage people, whether it's with youth or whomever, to engage and work together and do something.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Professor Mamo. Can you unmute, please, Professor Mamo?
Can you hear me? No?
Yes, yes.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I thank you. I sincerely appreciate all of you for having been working on this, and from the way you described now, that every day you've been working, which is so fascinating to hear that. And I really appreciate you. Also, our sister Dana, I want to appreciate. I also, there's Africa Center of Excellence on Data Science. I have PhD students at the University of Rwanda that I'm also involved in. They're doing good research, and Rwanda is really a good example, clean, and as you described it very well. And they just want I want to say 2 points. One is at the moment the country where I was born, Ethiopia, is in a war situation, and the war situation is related to ethnic division, language ethnic division, and this has been supported from the beginning. I don't know why the the Western world was behind this kind of division in Ethiopia, and now the war is continuing, and still we hear that the organization called that started this war is still supported by I mean amazing countries like America. I mean America should not be even really. I mean it's embarrassing to hear that they are saying this. So is there any chance, since I heard some of the professors are from America, is there any chance you could support us? I would like America to create the humanity savior world, not the military industrial complex. We don't need weapons. We don't need soldiers. We don't need. The world should be moving beyond this. I think we should make a strong paradigm shift to move into that world. And America is a great example because the whole world is in America, the whole all humanity. So why not make a humanity savior world, and then also use that kind of imagination uh, to try to see help us with now stopping the war in Ethiopia, because all the ordinary people have nothing to do with the thing are dying. Sleep, please, all of you. I really appeal to you. I'm sorry for doing it, but I think it's important because ordinary. I mean, over 1 year, people are just ordinary children are becoming soldiers, things like that. So please help us with that. And I think this is the let's also remove the coronavirus, the political coronavirus, as we have the health coronavirus. I think we should also find a way to make sure that the well-being of the people and the well-being of nature, the safety of nature, all this we should find a new equation, a new unified approach by which we could move together with values, respect, principles of trust each other. I think that's what I really strongly recommend that we do, and we should use this digital technology time also, not to use it to create cyber warfare, malwarfare, but let's try to create digital technology to actually help us. Where what we cannot do as humans with human errors, let's try to see if we could also control it, regulate it with technologically, and with that technology we could also achieve really resolve some of our difficulties that we the cheating, all the strange things people do to hurt each other. I think we should move away. The world should move into a different era, a post COVID-19 era, a post COVID-19 political era, a post COVID war making era, conflict creating era. I like you to all think, unthink to rethink, unlearn to relearn, undesign to redesign, uneconomics to re-economics it in a different way, and politics to politics it way, with a new philosophy and a new value. Let's go and make the world a better place and make it great, and then be for the future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. James, you want to add any point? Okay, thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. Actually, I always say World Talent Economy Forum more in action. So for next 1 years, we already working with Collated Lab as well as in Asia Pacific, and we are inviting 1,200 youth. Next 1 years, we will train 1,200 youth for entrepreneurship, and like the today's speakers like Professor Fred Philip, Mr. Tom, as well as Professor David Kelly. If you want to contribute through our School of Talent Economy, you can. And beside this, like next 12 months, we have a lot of interesting programs, because we already collaborate with all of the Muslim worlds, like 57 countries, they are Muslims, and they will join in World Talent Economy Forum. Beside that, we have more interesting program and activities. We do more focus on research, coaching, and consulting. And yeah, I just want to share that many corporation, many government body, as well as academy from Asia Pacific, now they are believing that World Talent Economy Forum, what they are doing, it's extremely valuable for the society. And I believe with your support, we can solve many social problems, but definitely youth is our number priority. So I agree with Mr. Tom Rose initiative as well. So just focus on the youth, believe in the youth communities, and try to support the youth communities with all of your knowledge and energy. They will solve many problems. So thank you for joining today's sessions. Thank you, Professor Fred Philip, for your continuous support. Mr. Tom Rose, you are excellent for World Talent Economy Forums. Definitely, we want to add in something in offline. Mr. David J. Kelly, your intelligence, always the inspiration for the youth community. Now, I know in the classroom, many people, they want to be like you and they want to be like our other speakers. That is the outcome, I want to say, the World Talent Economy Forum. And Mr. James, thank you for your support for World Talent Economy Forum. Hopefully, our collaboration will solve many problems in Africa as well as for the developing worlds. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.